Hello, welcome to My Coach Tools. My name is Senia and I'm here with you today to talk about tiredness. Tiredness. We're going to talk about tiredness. A lot of us feel tiredness. We know what tiredness feels like. It feels intense. So we're going to talk about tiredness. And in the meantime, Mandy in the background will probably reconnect us to the Periscope account. That's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about tiredness. The reason we're talking about tiredness is you may not even realize when you're getting tired. And what we're going to do today is talk about what is tiredness for you and 3 different tools, 3 different ways to pop out of it when it's time for you to pop out of it. So let's talk about tiredness. First, I want to give you a framework of how we can measure tiredness, because sometimes we think about tiredness only in the way of, oh, I'm physically tired. I'm just drained. I need to get some sleep. But I want to invite you to think about tiredness in a little bit different way, which also leads to the first tool. So let me do this by sharing a screen with you. I'm going to share a screen with you, which leads to an HBR article, a Harvard Business Review article. This article is from 2007. It's by Tony Schwartz and Catherine McCarthy. If you're interested in this content, there's also a book that's really relevant. And this is The Power of Full Engagement by Jim Lohr and Tony Schwartz, the same author. This says you have a limited amount of time. If you want to get everything done and you're productive and you want to get everything done, you have between this in the morning and this in the evening, you have a limited amount of time. But maybe one thing that you should be thinking about and that you're not thinking about is that energy is a different resource, as they say here. The reason I'm bringing up this article is because I really like the framework that it uses. The framework that it uses is it says, let's look at our energy in the context of 4 different things: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I'll break all that down. If we look at that, it's normal to understand that we are tired. It is so normal because I don't know why I'm exaggerating so much, but it's normal because yes, we might be physically tired just doing things, whether it's working, but also taking care of things around the house, whether we live by ourselves or with other people. So yes, physically we can get tired. Emotionally, it is draining. And sometimes we don't even know how draining to take in the news of the world. There are a lot of bad things going on right now, and I'm not going to list them one by one, but we all know what's difficult and what's hard and what's draining and what we are thinking about. So things can be emotionally draining. And sometimes we don't even register that because, oh, it's not physically draining. Yes, I read a news article, or I thought about some things, or I talked with a friend. Those things can be emotionally draining because you're looking at topics of life and death in some cases. And it's up to us how much we pay attention to that and how often throughout the day we allow ourselves to think about those things in terms of when our energy can go there. So there's physically draining, there's emotionally draining, there's mentally draining when we're working through how many things we need to get done, what we need to get done. And there's spiritually draining. I'm going to spend a moment on this because it may sound like an amorphous category. And I also needed to check in what they specifically meant by this. My understanding of what they meant by spirit and your spirit energy is what makes you feel alive. And that could be physical things like sports. It could be emotional things like having a connection with someone who matters. It could be mental things like debating a topic intellectually in business. So spiritually, what is spiritually draining for you? And how do you rejuvenate? So given these topics, a question I have for you is, where do you feel tired? That's my question to you. In what areas do you feel tired? Is it that you feel physically drained? You feel emotionally drained, mentally, spiritually, that you're not kind of moving towards where you want to be moving right now? That's my question to you. And given that, we're going to work through 3 different tools that could be helpful to just pick us out of that a little bit. But I also want to mention, in these daily webinars that we're running Monday to Friday, it's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns. We're not always going to say we're giving you tools and this is how you meet these goals and this is what you do. Sometimes it's really important to just acknowledge we're tired, or we're exhausted, or we're drained, or we've seen these things before and it's hard. That's true too. So sometimes we just need to acknowledge that tiredness. So welcome to a show today about tiredness, where I am asking you, what is tiring for you right now? Where are you drained? Okay, let's get into our tools. Our tools today are going to be they're going to be three, and I'll give them to you at the startup. One is we're going to be looking at this 4 framework model. Another is we're going to be looking into this 4 framework that I just described, which is managing your energy, not your time. Another is recovery in sports. I love this one. This shed a lot of light for me. And the third is dynamics. What's your range of tiredness to energetic? So here we go. Let's get into tool number 1. And before I do, let me tell you a story. When I'm a coach and we are a team of coaches, and let's actually just clear the screen for a second for a moment. And when we work with a leader, we work with that leader in asking what's going on in your life, what's important in your life, and what's going on in your life. And when we do that, we notice that the person is working on things that's really important for them work-wise and career-wise and moving their business forward and having business impact. But also, every time that we've coached a leader, no matter at what level, VP, SVP, someone who's a middle manager, someone who's an individual contributor, there is life that is just as parallel to them as their work. And so at the end of every coaching call, our coaches ask, what is your career action? What are you doing to move your work forward, your business impact forward, your company forward? What is your health action or body action? And what is your connection action? We started asking that. Why? Because yes, you're going to work on the career things and the business things. That's critical. That's why you're getting coaching. You may forget, if you weren't reminded, to work on health things. And so the story is we are often working with people and they're shocked. They just say, well, aren't we working on how I can have better executive presence? Or aren't we working on what I need to do in terms of moving forward into the VP level, whatever it might be? And we say, yes, but also what do you have as your foundation? And that's why when we have today's episode on tiredness, what is the foundation? So we ask in a coaching session, what are you doing on sleep, food, exercise, and meditation? Any kind of body-related, health-related. And I ask you, thank you for the comments, by the way, they're just coming in. I ask you, what are you doing on your sleep, food, exercise, and meditation? I'll just define these in a second. A lot of clients that we work with, they will say, I want to do something on my sleep. I commit to going to bed at 11 p.m. or I commit to having no more electronics after 9:30 p.m. So something like that. That's sleep. Food is certainly drink more water, eat more greens. Meditation is people will commit to 1 minute of meditating or going for a meditative walk. And exercise, people will commit to different things. So that's one thing. And once they do, here's the part of the story that is usually surprising. People will say, hey, I actually haven't exercised like that in 5 years. So it's surprising that I'm doing coaching on business things, but I'm also exercising in parallel to it. So to come back to our first tool that we're doing today is the 4 types of energy. And within these 4 types, you can be thinking about what can I do to rejuvenate myself? When you have physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energy, any of which can be drained, what I offer to you and suggest to you is to think about how can I up any of these? And don't try to do all 4 at once. So really just think, do I want to work on my physical energy? Do I want to work on my emotional energy and connecting with others? Do I want to work on my mental energy and balance my workload for when I'm on and when I'm off? Or do I want to work on my spirit, my spiritual energy and what I'm energized by? So one framework is looking at how you're doing in these 4 categories: body, emotional, mental, and spiritual, which is your energy towards life, your aliveness. How am I doing on those? And then seeing where can I make a tweak? That's framework number 1. Ask questions, tell me what you think about it, but I want to give you all 3 frameworks. So that's framework number 1. Framework number 2, sports recovery. Here I'm coming at it with a question for you, so please give me comments. Please think of a time in your life when you were at your most fit or most athletic, when you were really energized by what you were doing with your body. In that time, what did you do for recovery? In that time, what did you do for recovery? And it's surprising. I actually know this person is on the call. There's one of our coaches who I just recently spoke with. Brian, he said just recently that a question that's been in his head, I didn't make the connection when we just spoke, Brian. A, a question that's been in his head recently is, where can you let go in order to move forward more on the things that are important to you? What can you let go of in order to move forward on what's important to you? Same with recovery. If you're in training, if you're doing good exercise, where can you calm it down? When do you need to take that recovery? So my question to you is, when you have been at your most physically fit, how have you done the recovery process? Some people take days that are lower rather than higher. Some people do meditation on one day or yoga, and they'll do really high cardio on another. But what have you been doing in terms of that balance? So this is model number 2, to think about your tiredness. Model number 1 was these 4, look at my 4, these 4 different areas in which you may be drained, but you can also recuperate. And model number 2, that was the 4 energies, 4 types of energy. And model number 2 is, consider your highs and lows of energy and plan for your recovery. So I'll tell you how I do this. When I do virtual presentations, or when I used to do in-person large presentations to 200 people, I will not book anything intense the day after. I will book administrative things. I will book things that I need to do in my office, maybe even writing, but I would not book intense coaching calls or any kind of other workshops, because you need to pace your own sports recovery. And I'll tell you, this one had a big impact on me. A friend of mine who is in this coaching and HR space, she presented it to me as something that she was working on and bringing to others. But it's really planning for that recovery, just like we plan for that on time. And item number 3. So we have had two kinds of tools, and here's the third kind. There's a beautiful quote that says that music is not really music without a pause between the notes. What is your pause between the notes? In a sense, this is an analogy. It's very similar to framework 2, which is sports recovery. But I think about it in terms of dynamics and music. For music, what is your pause between the notes? And for dynamics, you notice I'm speaking at my regular speech. When I want to emphasize something, I might come closer to the screen or speak a little louder. When I want to be more pensive, I might step back a little or speak more softly or more paced, more calm paced. What are your dynamics in life? What is your pause between the notes? So this third tool is really an analogy. It's a way of thinking about, here's my calendar. I don't have any pauses for 2 or 3 days. I'm in Zoom meetings for 14 hours a day. Let's not even go that far. For 8 hours a day, I'm in Zoom meetings. That's intense. Where are your pauses? So we have these 3 frameworks. I'll sort of, the 4 types of energy: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual; sports recovery, and how do you plan for that recovery; and this analogy of, what is your pause between the notes? How loud and how soft do you want to get? I hope that didn't blow anyone's eardrums. I didn't try to get too intense. What are you doing on these? As you think about the 4 types of energy, sports recovery, or music and the dynamics of your life, in a sense, what are you doing on these? As you give me some comments on what you're doing, I will end with a story. I'll end with a story of a child. I've taught at my kids' mystery club. I've taught a mystery club at their school. It's an after-school activity. And these are kids at 4 p.m. who are tired at the end of the day. And I will usually, I didn't figure this out in the first few times that we were talking about writing mystery stories and detective stories and what can it be. This is back when school was in session. What are your characters like? What's the plot like? I didn't really get it at the beginning. But one of the biggest things that happened as I was working with the kids is I figured out one of their tiredness parts, which was food. No surprise. So I started bringing in, this is kind of weird, but steamed broccoli and clementine slices. Steamed broccoli and clementine slices. And that changed the dynamics of our meeting as well. So I'm giving you a simple, silly child situation where they are also managing their tiredness and their dynamics. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again. We are here every day, Monday to Friday, at 11 a.m. Pacific.